It's literal trash, so who cares at this point?
You're my favorite. I love your work.
When will a handsome, rich dupe come and marry me? Sultry and ankle. Hi, and welcome back. This week we are making a Bridgerton dress out of literal trash in honor of Daphne Bridgerton, because Daphne Bridgerton is trash. Everyone's been doing Bridgerton looks. I have yet to do a Regency outfit, so I figured I'd whip out the American Duchess pattern and basically chop up what I found in the dumpster and turn it into an outfit. It wasn't necessarily in the dumpster. When things are good, people will leave them just outside of the dumpster for other people to rummage through and pick up. I happen to live right above the dumpster, so I get first dibs on all the good stuff. When I was throwing out some trash, I noticed there was a package of something on the ground. I went to put it in the dumpster and saw it was in fact bridal clothing, which piqued my interest, so naturally I had to bring it upstairs. I gave it a good wash before checking it out, and it turned out to be new with tags, so it seems like maybe a mother of the bride sort of outfit with long flowy pants, a tank top, and a nice shrug to go over the top. I have decided to cut all of those various pieces up and then reassemble them into a Bridgerton dress, because they are all brightly colored, flowy polyester, which, as we know, is the Bridgerton look. So let's go ahead and make a Bridgerton dress out of literal trash. Now, the fact this is going to be made out of trash is no way an indictment on the Bridgerton costumes. I thought those were wonderful, except for Lady Featherington. What was going on with that silhouette? I'm thinking this will become a skirt, this will make the skirt bigger, and this will become a bodice. I'm going to separate the inner lining layer and turn that into a shift. Shifts, they're those things that weren't used at all in Bridgerton. I gotta seam rip this apart. I seam ripped the garments apart, but the organza and lining layers were also serged together, so I just gave up and cut those pieces off at the edges and removed the crotch part of the seam, and obviously I was overjoyed by all this work. Then I pinned the squared off pant legs to the center back of the shrug. So I seam ripped apart the pants and the top, and now I'm putting them back together in sort of square shapes. So I'm using the front of the shrug as the front of this, the back of the shrug as the center back, and then pant panels to extend it. And the whole idea was that the front will be kind of like fluttery because there's the asymmetrical front on the shrug. This side perfect, long at the top, nice and fluttery, comes down to a little point. This side, I thought I had done it correctly. I did it upside down. This point should be down here, and this long flat thing should be up here. I need to seam rip it off and start again. I fixed my novice mistake and then prepared for French seams by cutting down all of the excess until there was a little less than 1/4 of an inch of seam allowance. I pinned the pieces of fabric right sides together, entrapping in the 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I sewed through.
No!
I was assisted by Jewel Bean.
No, I'm working on that.
So if the skirt turns out weird in any way, it's because I was legally required not to move while the cat was on it. The world's a horrifying mess, but this is pretty cute, right? I'm gonna be honest, at this stage it's giving me more Clueless vibes than Bridgerton vibes, but I think we're getting somewhere. I don't have much left to work with. We've got the basics of the top, and probably need to take in the back quite a bit because there's like a lot of loose room going on here. The smallest size my pattern went to is 14, because I just realized that there are different sizes on the exteriors of packages for patterns. This should have been the side, to me, that it goes from 14 to 22. Now I understand why I would always look here, figure out the measurement, and then realize that the measurement wasn't included in the package. I thought that was just a weird tick of these things, but I feel like a real doofus for not knowing that there were sizes on the exteriors of packages. I took a stab at pleating the back using the scientific method of just randomly guesstimating. It kind of worked. I put stay stitches in the pleats that I just created, and I ran gathering stitches along the front 2 fluttering panels and then gathered those down until they fit into the right and left front pieces of the bodice. I pinned it all together, ran it through the sewing machine to attach the bodice to the skirt. Since I wasn't doing a lining layer, I needed something to face the neckline of the dress with, so I decided to make some piping. I cut out 2-inch wide strips as long as I could get them out of the lining fabric. Then I folded them in half with some yarn in the middle of them, and then used the zipper foot to stitch as closely as possible along the yarn. I then pinned everything in place along the neckline and used the piping as facing. So YouTube, I need your help. I see that there's a bit of puckering along the back. If you have any tips for how to stop that. I'm assuming there's something wrong with the tension in the curves and how I sewed those. I might try and flip it inside out and repin it to see if I can get it to lay smoother. Otherwise, I'm just mostly focused on fixing the placement of the pleats so that they line up there. Those are the pleats I want to try and recreate. I top stitched the piping on with right sides together, then I folded in the excess of the piping and tacked it down with the stitch in the ditch method, where I used my R-foot to get right up next to the piping on the front side and top stitch it down through the front of the piping and the seam allowance. While not having visible stitches on the front of the bodice, the stitches fall into the place between the piping and the organza on the front, where they're basically hidden. So I've been struggling to figure out how to do the underlayer for the dress because I didn't do it as a lining. I might want to history bound in this and kind of use it as a top layer, but it's not a complete dress. I finally figured out the solution. I'm going to take the lining layer and turn it into the strappy Regency petticoat. There'll be a waistband thing and then two little baby straps to keep it up at empire level instead of waist level, because I need it to hit above the waistline of the dress. There's enough to do it. I've French seamed everything together. I'm going to French seam this last one. I might leave a little opening at the top, opening to get it in and out, and then I wrote an article from the Jane Austen Museum in Bath, and they mentioned that those kind of petticoats are flat in front and gathered in back, so I'm going to keep the gathers in the back. It's not floor length, which, according to that one lady on Reddit, was the problem with my Lizzie Bennet dress. Thank you for giving me an excuse to not have this be floor length. But just to clarify, much like Bridgerton, this is vaguely inspired by history, but, you know, in no way historical. Much like many of the things I love, it came from the dumpster. For the sleeves, I have the original sleeve from the gown, from the shrug. They're a little dowdy, and definitely not Bridgerton. So I could leave that be. I could piece them, open them up here, insert a little piece where it won't be super visible to make them poofier and more Regency, which I'm kind of leaning towards. I did save one panel from a pant leg for potentially doing a flutter sleeve, although it's much more Bridgerton, but it might be a little too Hermione Granger with the way this is turning out. Might be able to cut out a more Regency sleeve. I added the piping detail. I redid the back pleats so that they would be more like the ones in Bridgerton, and so that they would kind of fall at the edges of the back. But I like how it came out the second time around. It's a miracle that I get anything done with sewing because he's currently sitting in my lap and trying to eat my pins. Okay, we'll just keep going. I folded in half some sateen ribbon and used that to bind the top of the petticoat and also make straps from it, and I pleated the fabric down to the measurement of my rib cage where it would hit. I've decided to go for a puff sleeve. I took the existing sleeve, cut it open, French seamed in a little panel underneath to make it really wide, and then I'm going to gather down the bottom and the top a little bit, fit the gathered bottom into the cuff. I'll probably put right sides together, sew around, and then whip the inside down like I did with the pirate shirt. I took a break from sleeve shenanigans to finish off the piping / facing. I folded it under and whipped it into the lining layer so it would lay flat. I was trying to create a Regency poofy sleeve, but it's looking a lot more like Rachel's bridesmaid dress, and I don't think we're going for ugly 80s or 90s wedding look. This needs to come up. Volume needs to be taken out of the inside and added to the front here. But the rest of it's looking real good. There's not really enough to make a full shift, so instead, in Bridgerton style, I'm ditching shifts altogether. And I had to redo this a couple times because initially I kind of left a weird messed up chunk back here, and I didn't want that being in the front, which is where it kind of fell initially. So I had to seam rip that all and redo it. But I added just a couple of gathers here and a little opening and tie back here. Is it Regency accurate? As much as Bridgerton is. This is from my own Regency fantasy reality. It's literal trash, so who cares at this point? Done is better than perfect. But there's just a little bit that peeks through, and this will cover most of the seam. Bottom's all hemmed, all the pleats are in. Had to redo the pleats twice. Made the piping myself. Thank you, Angela Clayton, for teaching me how to do that. In her Bridgerton Regency video, which, if you want to see how a real Bridgerton Inspired Regency dress is made, that's the one. Not this. But if you want to see some trash turn into some treasure, this is the one for you. Back to it. I decided I needed to start from scratch and draft new sleeves. I'm using a 1970s pattern with a puff sleeve. It's a bit longer than my fabric was, so I cut about an inch or two off of the bottom, trying to keep in the puffed curve, and I took a tiny bit off the top just so that I would have enough of the bottom sleeve left. I know I have an extra inch to ½ inch from the band that's going to go on the bottom, but I just wanted to make sure it was tall enough but still fit on the piece of fabric that I reserved for the sleeves. sewed on the 70s sleeve, but it's too droopy, too long, not really like the puff sleeve we're going for. So I set it up higher and put all the gathers just at the top. And I think that's better. I should maybe set it up a tiny bit higher still. I'm gonna try it on and see how it looks. It still needs to come up higher to end about here, so I'll take it up probably as high as it can go. I might have to find a better way of arranging the poof. I've come to the horrifying conclusion that I've done many things wrong with this sleeve. I both made the band too thick and distributed the gathers too much. Even though I whipped it down by hand, I need to rip off the entire thing and start over from scratch. Dang nabbit all, straight to heck. I cut and pressed the cuffs until they were half the original size. So I've updated the sleeve. It's the closest I've gotten so far to a puff sleeve. I think I'm just gonna leave well enough alone. It should really go up a lot higher, but I've seen him rip these off like 5 times, and this is good enough. We're just gonna go with this. In full Bridgerton style, I added some modern closures because I couldn't be bothered to sew in hooks and eyes. Then it was time to hit the ton and really give Lady Whistledown something to write about. Naturally, I didn't wear a shift under any of this. And because I haven't made Regency stays yet, I just put on my old 18th century pair, because it's close enough. All in all, I'm really pleased that I was able to make anything even remotely Bridgerton-like out of some clothing that I found in the trash. I even happened to have some thrift store costume jewelry that was suitably Bridgerton-esque. This dress is everything you want it to be: bright, playful, joyful, and just a little bit Regency. There's a bit of a chill in this room. Actually, there is a bit of a chill in this room. Sure, it has a lot of seams from being Frankenstein together, but it also has a flowy skirt. Look at it swoosh. The pleats aren't quite as beautiful as the inspiration from Bridgerton, but they do hide a lot of the French seams. Then, to improve my prospects on the marriage mart, my maman suggested that I improve my bust line with oranges. I'm gonna do, even though I'm wearing 18th century stays instead of Regency, I'm gonna try and enhance the bust to look more.
You're going for a harlot's look?
Oh, I gotta make a harlot's look. It's so cold, it's so stupid. Oh, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done on this channel. My bust is too big. Do you like my new bust? Woo! Do I look like the catch of the season?
Orange, lovely.
I have oranges because I'm rich, but not rich enough for pineapples. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the weird Bridgerton trash goodness. If you did, subscribe and give this video a like because there's plenty more sewing, shenanigans, and cats coming your way. And in the meantime, keep making.